Hey, I'm Decathlon Gamer, and welcome to F1 Manager 23. I am coming off of a 6-season, 116 episode long play series of F1 Manager 22. F1 Manager 23 is the second of a initial 3-year license that Frontier Developments has picked up with F1 to do this game. So expect at least another next year, and expect something very similar to last season of roughly 116 episodes and 6 seasons or more.
Formula One, the pinnacle of motorsport. With a global audience and drama to match, all the attention is now on race circuits around the world, waiting for the start of the fastest show on Earth. Last year's regulation changes saw closer on-track battles. Anyone expecting a smooth ride from the 2023 season is in for a shock. With a shake-up in the paddock resulting in the signing of several new team principals, F1 is primed and ready to light up the world stage. Team principals will already be talking tactics, boosting the confidence of their drivers and ensuring their pit crews make those box times as tight as possible. With a new era of racing now well underway, more teams than ever will be vying for points, podiums, and a chance at the championship. This is Formula One.
The championship is not where Williams would have chosen to end 2022, but that won't stop them fighting. Debutant Logan Sargent joins for the new season after a stellar F2 performance, driving alongside his more experienced teammate Alex Albon. With the right leadership, the team is set to come out swinging in 2023.
With only a single difficulty level, the game was pretty manageable. I took Williams, the weakest team in F1 Manager 22 and again in F1 Manager 23. Had them in the points before the end of the first season. Had them getting podiums and wins before the end of the second season, and winning 3 straight championships as we wrapped up our 6 seasons, including an epically dominating performance following regulation changes at the end of the 5th season. But without any variation on difficulty level, the challenge of taking the worst team to the top of the grid was actually kind of easy. To make it tougher, I put out a poll late in the cycle for F1 Manager 22, and the results of that poll is the challenge that we're going to take on this season. We are once again going to be playing as Williams, but that challenge alone is not tough enough. To make the game more challenging, we have opted for a situation that will definitely add significantly to the challenge. The situation that is going to be taking place within this series for F1 Manager 23, making it the Epic Challenge, is an all-female series. The entire Williams staff, including drivers, will all be replaced with female drivers. I can pick and choose freely as I go along throughout this series, but the entire staff must be replaced. I'm giving myself a window of up to 6 races to fully replace all of the staff. I will have to go through and do some scouting and make those decisions as we go along. But let's go ahead and begin our career with Williams Racing and the future of female in F1 motorsport. First step is to reappoint Claire Williams as the team principal of Williams F1. Now, of course, Williams Racing was founded by Frank Williams, the late great Frank Williams, who passed away a couple of years ago. His daughter, who grew up in the paddock, racing thoroughbred, and for a time was the team principal of Williams Racing until To Save the Team was sold off. Now, of course, most of you watching this are going to be diehard F1 fans, and you know all too well this story. But for the casuals, there's a great pedigree here. And even though the team principal is played by me within this, by name, Claire Williams is the perfect choice to take over the team. 20 million in real life is a lot of money. In the game, you can burn through that real fast. Our facilities are just a 20 out of 75. The facilities should have the same look and feel as to what we had a year ago. So one of our progression tracks is absolutely going to be getting those other 55 upgrades to our facilities as soon as possible. First, to generate income, and secondly, to help develop the car. Our staff, including the drivers, we're going to need a lot of help in that department, as we are going to be having an inferior group up front that is not experienced in F1 being brought in, expected to compete in F1 with F3 level capabilities. So we're going to have a lot of development, internal development to do. And those facilities are going to help with that significantly. Williams has a lot of history, 7 championships won in 46 seasons. They've been around for a very long time in Formula One. However, it's been quite a few years since they have been a competitive team. They've been at the back of the grid for a number of seasons now, and very much are the back markers who have a lot to overcome to get back in a competitive way. But all 5 of them will be replaced in the near future, including, really, all 3 of our drivers. Luc DuPont, the reserve driver for Williams F1 this season. For those who just want to see what the ratings are for the drivers this season, you're curious about that, or for those unfamiliar with the sport, as I go in to start scouting for drivers, the options are great at the top. They're all in F1 teams already, though. Our first driver comes in quite a ways down that list with Alex Albon at 81 overall. And our second driver, rookie Logan Sargent, comes in below a number of F2 drivers, below a number of reserve drivers. That would already be pretty challenging. But no, we've got to keep going down. We have not reached the first female driver available in the pool. Big news, unexpected news, and it's going to absolutely change the early days of this playthrough to an extent. Sophia Flörsch is right now the highest placed female in the world, in real life. She's an F3 driver for PHM Racing, but new to the game, she cannot race in F1. Now, in real life, there are licensing points to get the possibility to drive in F1. The equivalent of that here in game, which did not exist last year, that they must be at least 18 and have competed in at least 2 seasons of F2 or F3. Now, Flörsch is 22, so that part's covered. This is her first season in F3, so we are going to have to wait a year before we can hire Flörsch. She absolutely, though, without a doubt, will be the first pick that we have to bring into the team as soon as possible. Drivers may take some time, but the staff has no such restrictions, and therefore we're going to be able to make our staff turnover much earlier than we are able to make the driver turnover happen. In the meantime, we'll have to stick with the drivers we have and make the best of that situation. David Warner, 79 overall as our technical chief, is the hired staff. We've really lucked out in that Diana Romano, 31-year-old, 77 overall, is available in the technical chief department, meaning we're not going to see much of a drop-off in quality. I'm not even going to bother through scouting, straight into contract proposal. Talk about a difficult negotiation, but we do finally get the job done. 4 years, $2.25 million annually, but we do have our first female staff member coming in, and only a small drop-off in terms of where we were at with David Warner. Her ratings show that she's going to be weak in chassis and underfloor. As she levels up, I'm absolutely going to be adding points into the underfloor, as it is probably the most important aspect of the current generation of car. And with the new development focus, training is not done the way it used to be. You're picking an area of training which is going to pick certain attributes to develop. Her weakest area is structurally, with the chassis, underfloor, and suspension as the weakest rating, so that's the one we're going to focus on. One good thing about the 2023 season in F1 is that outside of a single rocket ship that is light years beyond everybody else, the rest of the grid is relatively close and competitive, even at the back. And you can see that our car is not dead last across the board as it was at the start of last season, as they were so far behind in development, but made pretty good progress. One area where the car is strong is top speed. It's right at middle of the grid in terms of top speed, and at times, at certain tracks, when they focus on it, is among the 2 or 3 fastest cars out there in real life. But the acceleration piece isn't there. It's slow to gain that top speed, and the cornering is certainly not good. But could be worse. It really could be worse. I mean, this is out of 20 cars, the rankings that you have here, and we're not 19th across the board. Of course, car 1 is always going to place itself ahead of an identical car 2 in these rankings. So 19th would be the worst. We're not the worst in any category. Could be semi-competitive in the long haul. We're not starting from a place where the car is terrible, but we are going to be losing some quality as we make these staff changes and eventually driver changes along the way with this series. Funding is going to be an issue early on in this series, as our team rating is just 9th of 10 in terms of the finances that we bring in. We're going to be having 2.7 million per race as we go along throughout this season. Before we jump into our first race, there is some good news though on Florsch. She did have her maiden season in F3 in 2020. That will mean this is her second season for F3, and therefore at the start of next season we should have our racer. First upgrade, and actually a relatively cheap one, is our tour center. It's already a level 3, but getting it to level 4 and 5 will help with some weekly income. Long term it'll absolutely pay for itself, so we'll go ahead and take that first upgrade. Another one we want to get on with, even though it comes with a bit of a maintenance cost. The helipad will increase our sponsor targets payout, and all of that means extra money, so targeting the finances first. Looks like our permanent drivers are going to be a wait and see, though Florsch is the obvious first one that will be coming into the team next season. But in the meantime, it's the staff that has already experienced turnover of 1, and the others within the coming races. So weekly development of staff is going to be important for them to be effective for us. So the team hub is the next most important piece for us. A little bit more costly of an upgrade, but very important to our progress. Now within the car development facilities, we're going to need a rocket ship with our eventual much weaker class of drivers. We're going to have to make some upgrades here as soon as possible. They are super expensive. Everything is very low level for us, but for 10 million, which we do have, not in excess of by a whole lot, but we can get the first of these upgrades going along, and it's going to help us in quite a few areas in terms of how car development is going to be improved. Season 1, I'm definitely not looking to build a rocket ship right away, but we are going to have to make some upgrades to the car along the way. I want to spend more of our money on the infrastructure and getting the staff right and building for the long term, especially as we're going to have drivers that we aren't going to be having with us for terribly long, and I don't want to be going out and winning a championship with them before we get to the eventual setup for the series that we're looking for. And therefore, upgrades will be a little less frequent than expected, and so we'll only do some along the way, but we are going to begin with an underfloor and a big underfloor upgrade, and have it be the only upgrade for a little while, at least for this period. 2 changes from last year's game that I'm liking is that dirty air cornering has been lumped into just dirty air tolerance, as it was broken down into low, medium, and high last year. So it's just general, how well can you follow other cars, but also durability. I really like that durability has been added. Unlike last year's game, here where you start trying to specialize design focus wise, you could really put extra into an area of your design significantly. You can make significant gains in specific areas, but it also significantly takes away from the others. So I like that there's a lot more sway in what you do with individual components. If we go neutral across the board, we make solid gains, but the moment you start feeding into another one, the other areas drop off drastically, which means you're really only making singular gains, or you're going to have to sacrifice and make across the board gains. Slightly tweaked system to what we had a year ago in terms of development, even though it's the same basic system. I like the changes that they've made here. 1 helipad upgrade complete. I'm going to go straight into the second one for those extra bonuses. Another new feature this year, as it was a very empty shell a year ago when it came to pit crew, is you have a pit crew training schedule this year, which is a great feature. You have a lot of individual areas of expertise going into what happens with your pit stops that not only determines the time, but will determine whether there's mistakes in added time. Early strategy in this department is going to come down to one key factor. Our team is slow. So chance of mistakes, long term, I think, is a great thing. You want to decrease that because you add 5 seconds on here versus saving a tenth of a second. How many times? You have to go through 50 pit stops to make up the 5 seconds that you lost the one time you make the mistake. So consistency is very important if you're competitive. When you're not very competitive, you need every little advantage you can get to be more competitive on the day, to get that 10th place, to get that 1 point. And therefore, the pit stop time becomes that much more important. And if you're having problems, you're having problems. You're just going to have a bad race. You're going to have a lot of bad races. But one good race can come down to that tenth of a second that you gained on that pit stop. So for the short term, we're going to work on estimated pit stop time as a priority.
A very warm welcome to you all. It sure does feel good to be back. Every team and driver comes here with the same goal, to win. But that's for the end of the season. For now, they have to prepare to fight for F1 glory. Bahrain International Circuit was Formula One's first venue in the Middle East and is still a calendar favourite. Dusty and challenging, this desert track is a real test of endurance for teams and for drivers.
Jumping straight into Saturday, this is free practice 3. Little subtle differences in the game this year, but otherwise most of what we have here, most of the UI is definitely the same. And certainly the practice routine remains the same as what we had last season. So getting the cars out, getting that feedback loop to try to improve. I will do a lot of practice simulations through this because it only makes so much of a difference to what happens. It's relatively minor in terms of the longevity of the playthrough and how many episodes we're going to be going through. It's not terribly impactful on what happens. To preserve some components, I do have things turned down, so we're not going to be performing, but FP1, FP2, how the team performed had us generally around 13th to 15th, though we should be probably the slowest 2 in this session as I do back off. Now, as it's a brand new season and all of the components are new, the familiarity piece with the components themselves, they're only at 50%. Things are pretty slow in that department.
Okay, there's a big crash.
In terms of track acclimatization,
There's probably a lot of debris
Albin
on the start finish.
really struggling so far in this one, as we have had a practice session crash here with the Ferrari and the Mercedes. That's our first look at the pair of them as they go side by side and collide with one another. And the setup feedback loop remains the same as what we've had. New driver preparation format and morale format, and this is where it could play a factor in what happens going into races. But again, as these drivers are just temporary for us anyway, I don't necessarily want to get the most out of the car in the first season. So the new system takes your acclimatization, your familiarity with car components, and then the setup, the car setup. That combination is no longer just adding a bonus to the quality of the drivers, though I'm sure it actually is going to work in a similar manner to the old system, probably under the hood. But on the surface, the new driver confidence is now based on that. And 100% does not set you up ideally, as we can see here, that the limit of that 87% that we got with Albin brought him to here. So it lines up perfectly with the new morale piece, where morale is bad or good, and we can easily get into a fairly decent range. We start with the old familiar onboard camera, and just as we're going out, we literally get blocked by a Red Bull as we begin our first ever flying lap under qualifying, as Albin has been impeded in literally the first corner of our first qualifying lap. It looks like that is one thing that has not been addressed yet within the game. It's green, but green doesn't mean anything. It's his first lap. For those unfamiliar with the sport and the timings, you're going to have 3 different types of timings. You're going to have yellow, green, or purple. Yellow is going to signify that you are slower in that sector. You can see it's broken up into 3 components. So the lap is broken up into 3 sectors. So for that's for each sector. Yellow means you were slower than previous times within that sector. Green means you are up on your personal best within that sector, so you're improving your time. And purple means you are fastest. Albin, 4.3 seconds off the pace, and that 3 seconds were lost because we were cut off by a Red Bull. Logan Sargent is currently P11 with a really good first lap. I went again for Albin on the same set of tires for a second run, looking to at least improve his time and get some sort of banker lap in. He ended up being impeded again in the first sector for a second time and still couldn't put it in a competitive lap. It was slightly better than the first one, but it was certainly well off the pace. So now everything is riding on this second lap, or third lap now, from Albin. He is on the fresh set for this one, as is Logan Sargent. As time is up, this is our final run. We'll see if we can get out of Q1, which is my objective. Top 15, qualify for Q2. Rounds the final corner. He has improved his time in both sectors, but where will he be? How much does he move up? Only P18. Ouch. So that is Albin out in Q1. But Logan Sargent, who is not improving his time, currently stands now at P12. There's already 3 behind him. DeVries 4 behind him. Looks like he might have done enough to get out of this session. Norris, Piastri, Ocon. Ocon and Norris, Piastri and Norris went early. So I think they are already done with their flying laps as well, which means we should be safe, at least with 1 car into Q2.
Welcome to race day. And before we get down to it, last-minute checks are being made.
Bahrain has seen some of the most dramatic races in F1, like Sergio Perez's incredible 2020 victory, surging ahead from being last on the opening lap.
Now, Karun, with regards to Alex Albon, just how will he be feeling at this point in the weekend?
They don't seem to be getting the best from the car right now, to be honest. Not sure if it's the balance or just an issue with confidence, but something needs to change.
And there's going to be a lot for the teams to handle. So will the drivers and their cars be able to deal with the pressure here in Bahrain? Here in Sakir, the floodlights are on, and it's nearly time for 57 laps around the Bahrain International Circuit. Our attention shifts to Lewis Hamilton and what he can produce in this race.
Absolutely. Sitting in P7 and hoping to pick up a few points for the team.
This should certainly be a good one, folks. And this is it, the Bahrain Grand Prix. And it's lights out, and away we go.
And we are now into our first race of this career mode, but of course the changes that are to come for the team are not here yet. We're still, even then, at the back of the grid with things getting bunched up here in turn 1, but it looks like we are at least clean through the first turn. This year we should expect to see a lot more turn 1 incidents, or first lap incidents anyway. For now, Sargent, who ended up qualifying P14, is P15, and Albin, who qualified P18, is P19, so both of them losing 1 position off the start. Let's go ahead and settle in quickly here. They have changed the deployment for ERS. We're going to go neutral for now. You can now top up and just slowly gain back, so you don't have to lose a lot of pace. I like that option available this year. So here, as we take things a little bit faster with Albin, times 2 speed, only 19th for him, and already over a second behind the car in front. We seem to be quite a bit off the pace here early on in this one, as Albin is overtaken by Piastri and falls to last place. Is this because I didn't push long enough, or is he really just that far off it at the moment? However, of course, I did opt for kind of the C strategy, which is medium, soft, medium, and Sargent's dropping down the order as well, and I think that might have something to do with it. It might. Piastri, though, did overtake us from also being on the mediums, but going for the let's be quicker towards the end of the race as opposed to the beginning could be a bit of a factor with this one. Piastri does seem to be pushing a little bit harder as he is already going deeper. He's at 94% where we're at 96, and Sargent is down to P18. So the AI different this year. There's a lot more push. In fact, I wonder if we're getting anything along with that one. Yeah, wow, we are well off the pace right now. I'm wondering if I need to be pushing, or this could be changing our strategy altogether and pushing for a one-stopper. If we're losing this much time preserving the life of the tires, this might be better as a one-stop strategy as opposed to the two-stop strategy that we have initially set ourselves up for, as others definitely seem to be pushing harder in these early laps and are certainly pulling away from us here quite a bit. Let's be patient for now, kind of see what happens, but I do think that I'm already thinking about changing strategy here, using the longevity component that we are setting ourselves up for now by going neutral and trying to turn this into a one-stopper. As Ocon runs wide, he spins on turn 11 actually, but he does rejoin ahead of us. Took a little life out of those tires too in that spin. He's now at 78%. See, everybody else is at about 83, so he dropped about 5% with that spin, and meanwhile we are looking better and better in terms of trying to turn this into a long run, turn it into a one-stopper potentially. Albin overtakes Piastri, so gets back ahead of him, so that's good. Is the tire life having anything to do with that, or is that DRS, or did Piastri make a mistake? With the poor start to the race, I'm definitely leaning towards trying to make a one-stopper a possibility, where the two-stopper seems inevitable for everybody else. One thing that I'm quickly picking up on, where we are not pushing, doesn't seem to matter. The others, tire life, very dependent on temperature these days, and temperature has picked up, so our degradation rate has increased. Others, I think it maybe more of they have backed off now as well, and they're not pushing. They pushed in those early laps and pulled away from us a little bit, but now we're running similar. As Verstappen runs wide on turn 7, doesn't impact him at all, as the Red Bull is so much faster than everybody else. One thing I did notice though, based on qualifying times, the field's a little closer to Red Bull than what they actually are in real life. See, Sargent is probably not great on tires, is falling off rather quickly compared to Albin. So maybe Albin I could squeeze out a one-stopper, where Albin has gotten around Sargent, by the way, and Sargent going backwards, Piastri with a lockup, so at least we're ahead of one car. And the first pit stops have begun. Those on the soft compound already pitting here on lap 19. Sargent may not be up for a one-stopper just based on his ability to conserve. Norris, pit stop issue. Pit stop issue already. First round of pit stops, and we see an issue with one of the cars.
And they just really struggle. It's not a smooth one.
Not quite sure what the issue was there. It didn't show it with the release. I don't think Sargent has any hope of going the race distance, so I'm going to go ahead and go with him, and we're going to push for a couple of laps. With others pitting right now, Albin's up to 13th, Sargent is 15th, but currently being overtaken by De Vries. Albin, it's looking like we may be stuck with a two-stopper anyway, and we're just a bit slow, but at least we'll be on the soft compound for the last two. We'll see how long he can kind of hang on before falling off the cliff, but already at 59%, it's not looking great. Noda with a pit stop issue, so there's a second car now losing time. Bottas has been has overtaken Sargent, so he's back down to P16 again. And Sargent is going to dive off into the pits first. He is pitting at the exact time that he was supposed to, and is probably going to be coming back out in last place, potentially, as Piastri definitely pit a bit sooner. 2.729. 13th on in terms of the pit stop time so far. Not everybody's pit yet. That's absolutely one of the slowest. Sargent is going to come back out ahead of Piastri, though. And Piastri already down to 81%. So at least we're good on that part. And we should be faster the rest of the race. But in the meantime, Albon has not pit yet. He's just been overtaken by Bottas. The hope of a one-stopper faded real quick. He just does not have the extra longevity going into the tires that I was hoping he might have, as Piastri has overtaken Sargent. Sargent's still trying to get the car up to temperature. As you can see, that the tires are actually quite low, so pushing early on may not be a bad thing to get him up to temperature a little bit faster. Continually pushing as, carcass temperature, new thing within the game, but you can see that even though Piastri has been on those tires quite a bit longer and they're quite a bit used, and Sargent has brand new, fresh, soft tires, they're not up to temperature yet. So he's a little bit off pace on that outlet, and it has hurt him. But in the meantime, Albon is now pushing a bit hard, and I'm going to make one more lap, and then we're going to bring him around and bring him in. Albon has already fallen to P16 with multiple overtakes happening. Those used mediums just not giving him the pace he needed to continue on, really negating any hope of a one-stop strategy. 2.710 for that, and that's bad. That was bad. We are quite low on the times, so we are starting with the slowest pit stops, as well as what should be the slowest car. We're 18th as we come out. I'm going to stay pushing a little bit longer, though, to get us up to speed. Okay, we're into the happy zone, so let's go ahead and drop to standard.
Sorry.
Oh, Sargent just spun.
Yes.
Great. And he is going to be prone to mistakes, as he is a rookie driver with a pretty low rating. We're going to see a lot more of that as we make changes to drivers that are nowhere near rookie level.
Okay, back off.
So Sargent already last place, now even further down, and the softs a bit more used than what they were a moment ago, as he drops the quality down pretty quick and overheats the tires a little bit. So we're going to drop down to low for the time being to bring the temperature back down. But Albon's going to be in good shape for a bit longer. We can actually make some progress right now. Albon only comes out just ahead of Piastri, though, well down in 18th. Guan Yu Zhou, long ways ahead of us, and then it's really far to others. Ocon, who made that mistake earlier, comes out just ahead of us. But Hulkenberg, the last driver in the points, he's a half a lap ahead, so that's not looking good for our chances today to do anything. Sargent on the verge of getting lapped by current race leader Charles Leclerc. Verstappen, though, has come right up on him, is probably going to overtake him on this very lap. It's lap 30 of 57. Multiple cars have crashed, and it looks like Logan Sargent is involved.
The impact on the car, it's quite clear.
Don't even see the accident here, but it is the Ferrari who is lapping Logan Sargent. Sargent picks up a 5-second penalty, so apparently he was at fault for clipping, causing a collision. So as if it wasn't bad enough already, Sargent picks up a penalty, which we will be serving shortly, as we are one lap away from pitting for the final time. So it was right rear, left front. It was wheel-to-wheel tap. Absolutely no damage whatsoever for Sargent. That's good. But as it was a lead lap car versus a lapped car, we very quickly get slapped with a 5-second, causing a collision penalty. No surprise about that one. Turns it into a 7.809 stop overall, dropping Sargent to last place and now being well behind Piastri, quite a bit down. But that is his last stop, and we're going to push till we get the tire temperatures up. But of course, we are now in lap traffic all the way, and going to be catching those blue flags, slowing us down more and more. Albin heads down pit road for his final stop of this first race of the season. It's a much better one than his teammates. However, a 2.764 is still not a good time. We're still well off compared to everybody else when it comes to our pit stops. We've got a little bit of spare fuel, not a lot, but we do have fresh soft tires that we are pitting definitely later than most everybody else. Sonoda still out there, 31%. Ocon still out there at 53%, and Sainz still out there. Everybody else has already made their final stops a while ago. We do come out behind De Vries. We do come out behind Bottas. I'm going to see if we can't at least catch them and see what happens here with Ocon and Sonoda as they are still pitting. And we're getting overtaken right now by Guan Yu Zhou. Let's see if we should have DRS here. And if we can't get back around him as we continue to push on, let's go ahead and go deploy. Disappointing to be behind him right now. We are already up to speed. That was our outlap as we were a little slow on the outlap. That drops Albin to P18. Sonoda comes out in between. Ocon comes out ahead. So those guys are going to probably be hard to catch. But Bottas, De Vries, and Guan Yu Zhou are the possibilities for overtake. And we do get the overtake back on Guan Yu Zhou up to 17th. Not great for our first race. But that is the nature of the beast when we are in what is, on balance, the slowest car on the grid. 8 seconds ahead of us. It's not looking likely that we're going to compete with those guys. 2 seconds ahead of Zhou, though, so we did get him out of DRS range. Let's go back to neutral. So after a handful of laps, here's what we're finding. One, we are driving away from Guan Yu Zhou quite quickly. He's 6 seconds behind us. We're also closing that gap. We were 8 seconds down on De Vries. We're now inside 5 seconds, but we're also inside a handful of laps to go in this race, meaning we are running out of time pretty quickly. Sonoda, with those fresh tires, move forward, but Bottas and De Vries are slow. They are the two that I could potentially catch, while Ocon and Sonoda are driving away. So our best position we can hope for is P15, but I used up some battery to get away from Zhou. I don't have a lot right now. I could slowly try to top that up as we get a little bit closer and just get a slow gain on that one. In the meantime, though, the fuel still negative 0.3, so I might have to do some lift and coast the rest of the way, but I'd like to do it from DRS range. Tires are down to a good temperature and at 82%, and I absolutely can push when the time comes. Meanwhile, Sargent, we're gaining on Piastri. We were more than 12 seconds behind. It's only 9, but it looks like he is probably destined for P20. We might as well save the engine life for him for another race. It's P19 anyway. What's the point? But in the meantime, for Albin, P15 would not be a bad thing. So let's see if we can't get up there and make that happen. Down to 0.2 on the negative balance for our fuel for the end of the race, and also getting a little bit closer now at 2.7. Alright, let's go ahead and go back to neutral. We have certainly saved up a little bit of ERS for a potential overtake. We're going to save this push until we get closer so that we don't overheat the tires too fast. De Vries and Bottas are right there neck and neck together. Could be an easy overtake potentially on both, but following the second guy, he's going to have DRS, so it makes it slightly complicated. Lap 54. Medium drivers are all well ahead of us, but we do have Sainz closing us down rather quickly. I don't think he's going to impact our last few laps here. I think we will stay far enough ahead, but Albin is now in DRS range. We cannot turn the engine up, but we can absolutely go aggressive and go deploy. From the visor cam. Side by side now with De Vries, and we are around as we head down the straight with DRS, and we should be able to get the other overtake done as well, and we do. We're around Bottas, we're around De Vries, we're into 15th place. Sargent has closed up on Piastri, by the way. We can get that 19th position for him. I'm not going to turn the engine up, though. 3.8 ahead of Bottas, so we've comfortably driven away from those guys. And we have closed in a fair bit on Sonoda, but it seems unlikely that we're going to catch him here on this last lap to get another position as we're a few seconds back. But meanwhile, with Sargent, we have made it around Piastri. So into P19, P15, P19.
Over the finish line, and
With the
today's
slowest
winner.
car, I suppose, is okay. Verstappen wins quite comfortably ahead of Leclerc. Then Perez. Sainz will come in next. And Tsunoda will cross that line. It looks like Albon is destined for P15. We get a little bit closer, 2.5 seconds down on Tsunoda, but unable to catch him. Still, good gains. We gained essentially 3 positions on that last stint with Albon. As Joe, we've come out just ahead, but he overtook us on that first lap. And then by the time we got the tires warmed up, we were able to get back around him, plus 2 more positions through that last stint by conserving a little bit, extending that first stint. That helped us out. Albon, remember, started P18, so he did finish better than where he started, and all 20 cars finished the race. That is going to do it for this first episode. This is going to be a long series, 100 plus episodes to come. Therefore, please help me out to get this out there with the algorithm. Take a moment, drop below, click that like button, leave a comment to support and boost that algorithm a bit. And I'll see you next time. I'm Decathlon Gamer. Appreciate you being here. Have a good one. Be safe out there. Bye for now.